society. So liberation theology is concerned about these things. It does not honor you because of your title. And all of this stuff has a history. Michelangelo was a fairly good painter and scholar, right? And also a good sculptor. If you go to the Sistine Chapel, you see the risks he took in his paintings. You look carefully and you'll see high-level church people where? In hell. Beautiful statement. I mean, totally theologically accurate statement. You can take your honors to hell with you. And that's what he was saying. Who was paying his salary? The Pope. That's what I call a gutsy guy, right? Nobody ever painted that over, you know. Why? Because he was so theologically correct. The fact that you're in a position of authority does not mean you know anything. So anything you say has to be evaluated, has to be reflected upon. That applies to people in the church and elsewhere. This is part and parcel of liberation theology. The other part of it that came up with the Vatican Council was to take hierarchy and turn it upside down. This led to the development of what are called base communities. A base community is a small group of people that come together, where in Latin America, they usually would start their meeting with a prayer and then have some reflection as an observation. After they make their observation, they make a judgment. For example, at the time when our country was involved in oppressing El Salvador, and that's what led to millions of Salvadorans coming to the United States. They didn't come here before that, you know. There were very few Salvadorans here. Now there's a lot of them. Why? They were being bombed by our own aircraft. So they get together in little groups, and they first meeting would say, well, are we free to let people kill us? And in the group, someone might say, well, I guess we are. Jesus let somebody kill him. Well, are we free to let somebody kill our old grandmother and our children? Well, wait a minute, that's something else. We don't want to bring that up. Well, we got to bring it up. Why? Because it's what's happening. Well, how's it happening? Well, these helicopters are flying over and indiscriminately firing at us. So at the end of the meeting, in one case, they went to the air base and they destroyed 6 helicopters without any pilots in them because they didn't want to hurt anybody. But they said, we can't let these helicopters fly over and kill us. We aren't responsible for how stupid they are. We aren't responsible for what dumb klutz told them to do this, but we are going to respond to it. Thank you very much. And so that's why you get a different response. What's that from? It's from the base community. It's where people at the base make an observation, a judgment, and a praxis. And the praxis is, what are we going to do? Because in liberation theology, the theme is, we're not here to watch life go by. We're here to be part of history. We're here to do history. We're here to be participants in life. And we were told not to have strange gods before us. Now, we're not going to have any strange gods. We're not going to have our country become a god. Say, well, it had to be right. It was U.S. foreign policy. It had to be right, because that's our team. No, I'm sorry. God is not on your side. Thank you very much. God is on the side of justice. God is not on any, to say that God is on an individual country's side is idol worship against the first commandment of God. Other things that began to develop in liberation theology that I think are very important for this moment in history is a lack of wanting to argue about doctrinal issues. This is very important because much of the history of the church has been in trying to define things relating to God. God will do this, won't do that, can't do this, etc. This becomes very obnoxious and very irreverent because we know little or nothing about God, period. So to start claiming, as the TV people do, that I'll tell you all about what God will or won't do, is crass arrogance and very repulsive. So the message of liberation theology is, would you please tell me your sacred story? You're from Vancouver, you're indigenous, the raven created the world. It's a very interesting story. Tell me about it. I'd like to hear your sacred story. And of course, I'll tell you mine. And we'll see we both have sacred stories, and that a lot of our religious views came from our anthropology, the way we grew up historically. Hammurabi came up in Babylon with a code. That code predated the Ten Commandments, and it was very similar in every way. So we look at the anthropology where we came from. In the church, for example, people might want to get into long arguments on things like, you know, the mother of Jesus was a virgin, etc., etc. And others say, no, she was not, etc. So there were other members of the family. What are we doing? We're wasting our time arguing. Why? We're arguing about things about which we don't know. Rather than do that, why don't we focus our attention on our conduct? And why don't we see that there is a unifying principle in the world that can bring all religions together? And that is what has been identified by theologians over the years as the fruits of the Spirit. And those things are visible just as much as electricity is visible in this room. So that if you focus on the fruits of the Spirit, then you are going to be able to draw together people who have entirely different anthropological backgrounds. What are the fruits of the Spirit? Well, first of course, would be justice. That justice is a fruit of the Spirit. Peace is a fruit of the Spirit. Joy, love, endurance, courage. These are fruits of the Spirit. Why? It's very obvious that they shine like electricity in the world. And someone who is the head of a church and is a militarist, well, he doesn't belong to what I belong to. I belong to the fruits of the Spirit. The name of my religion doesn't tell you anything. Augusto Pinochet Ugarte was the Nazi dictator in charge of Chile after we overthrew that government in 1973, September 11th. He's a Roman Catholic. Well, that's very nice. He's a murderer, an assassin, and a torturer. Thank you very much. I'd have much more respect for an atheist who was working for peace than I would for a fellow Roman Catholic who was a dictator. Do you see what I'm trying to say? The name of your religion is irrelevant. And of course, that's very clear scripturally. Jesus spoke of the wheat and the weeds growing up together. They do grow up together. One of them looks like an important figure and he's a fraud. The other one is just trying to make money on religion. Somebody else is very sincere. That can be measured. By their fruits you shall know them. Very, very easy. Very simple. So you want to hear the sacred story of others. So what are we saying about the approach of liberation theology? We don't want to get lost in doctrinal arguments. They are literally a waste of time, and they're very irreverent for the most part. We see reverence in the Buddhists, and very unfortunately, Pope John Paul II wrote a rather poor piece about Buddhism. He said, well, this is a functionally atheistic religion. Well, the Buddhists were really furious at him. And when he got to Sri Lanka, they let him know that. They said, wait a minute, we're East. East knows how to stand back in awe at the mystery. That's reverence. West is irreverent because you're trying to say you know everything. You don't know anything. And the more you understand that you don't know anything, the more reverent you'll be. And that is why liberation theology rejects fundamentalism. Fundamentalism, according to Arnold Toynbee, a great British historian, is based on the idea that I have the truth. I have the absolute truth. And outside of my truth, there are devils. And I have to kill the devil. So Toynbee's point was, once you are really in a fundamentalist position, you will kill. Now you can be a nationalistic fundamentalist. You can say, whatever my country does is right, my country right or wrong, you will kill. Very dangerous position. Does it make any difference what kind of fundamentalism? It doesn't make any difference at all. It's all the same. It's all the same. It's exclusivity. It's you're out, I'm in.